uncertainty, where we looked at five schematic themes, where we looked at risks and threat landscape. So how geopolitics is currently shaping the cybersecurity landscape. And also, we also looked at cybersecurity strategies and operations, where we actually looked at the investments that are being done within cybersecurity space, how it does impact cybersecurity. And we can't actually go out without talking about AI. And we all know that AI is here to stay. So we also looked at AI in cybersecurity, where from it being a promise to it becoming a priority. And then we looked at quantum computing readiness. So preparing for the next level of threats, where we see cryptography being broken within a matter of minutes when it comes to quantum computing. And we also looked at the cyber talent and skills. So looking at the threat landscape, we saw an 2% increase in investment within within the cyberspace. We also saw that most of the African leaders are actually doing a lot of change when it comes to infrastructure. We also saw that some of these geopolitical themes that are shaping cybersecurity vulnerabilities actually also comes with the changing trade and operating policies that most organizations are currently operating in. Also, we also saw an increase in cyber insurance, which actually saw that about 35% of cyber insurance are actually changing how people are actually thinking about cyber insurance. Also, how businesses are also contacted. So we saw that we've seen a lot of vulnerabilities and how the cyber threat landscape is changing, because most businesses are also changing, and also third parties that are being introduced within our organizations. So the top two within Africa that were priorities, or most organizations were least prepared for, was cloud and third-party breaches, because we've actually seen that most people within Africa are actually moving towards the cloud. And additionally, we have a lot of third-party integrators within our infrastructure. So just as I said earlier, with cyber-related incidents or cloud-related incidents, where we saw within the global reach of about 33, and for Africa we saw about 30%. The same thing we also saw that another concern that most of the world is looking at is actually looking at 0-day. However, within Africa, the major headache for most of our African leaders were cloud-related threats, as well as third-party, as earlier mentioned. Social engineering is also still there, that we can't run away from. And also, we also saw an employment infiltration, where we realized that some people, even though they've left the organizations, still have access to these critical infrastructure or the places they used to work for. So most organizations are saying, or most leaders are saying, that those are currently the threats that they actually are not ready for. Even though they've put in some measures, they think that if something of these happen, it will actually impact them. So now we'll look at where our money is going. We have a lot of, anytime we have sessions that has to do with funding, especially within cybersecurity, we realize that the CFOs are complaining, and then the CEOs are saying, where's the money going? So hopefully we can address that. So we realized that within Africa, we saw that data protection is actually one of the urgent priority that most leaders are actually concerned about. And that is where most of the funds that we use within to protect our infrastructure is being shared or is being moved towards. So we realize that data protection and data trust, we spend a lot of money or money within that area. Cloud security is also another area where within Africa we're actually spending much money in. And artificial intelligence. Currently, almost every organization has one way or the other using AI to either augment their processes or improve efficiency. And then we also saw that threat management as well as network security also did play a role when it comes to revenue for cybersecurity. So we also asked leaders where do they see or how do they see their budget changing, what percentage or at what range that they think that the coming year, how their budget will be affected when it comes to cybersecurity. We had about 11% saying that it will actually increase by more, which is actually a good thing. It means that most organized leaders are actually investing heavily in that space. We also saw that most leaders are also saying that between 5 and 10%, we actually would see about 36% of them saying that they would actually invest more, which is also good. And about 5% also saying that nothing will change. But at least the number for nothing will change within Africa is less. So it's actually a good sign that we are doing the right thing. Additionally, we actually also looked at how we are spending, whether we are spending on reactive changes or proactive changes. And we could actually see that we are actually much more on proactive changes or security solutions rather than reactive solutions. And with this slide, so what we actually gained from this is we wanted to see most of the spending was actually attributed to consolidated tools. So we used to know before, I think I'll go a bit technical, before this whole firewalls and SIEM solutions came, we actually even had separate tools. So you had a separate IDS, you had a separate tool for IPS, you had another separate tool for SIEM solution just to collect logs, another tool to correlate all these logs. But most of the spending are actually spent on tools that actually consolidate these tools, or solutions that actually consolidate these tools. Now you have a firewall that has IPS, IDS, all within the same firewall, or even doing zero trust within the same firewall. So we actually saw that most leaders are investing in these solutions because they see that it's actually improved their operational efficiency, it lowers their costs for them, it reduces their costs, and as well as improving resilience in that regard. Then we look at AI in security. So I always say AI actually is in 3 phases. It's either to help security in defense, or to be used by the bad guys to break those defenses. And also, we as cybersecurity experts or within the leadership, how AI or security, how we can actually protect AI as well. So in that regard, we actually looked at the top AI scenarios of concerns, and then we realized that AI-powered malware is actually the top of the list within Africa and even globally as well. The same for supply chain attacks and also even deepfake. We saw that within Africa, most of the scenarios or where we actually find AI attacks are within deepfake is also part of it. And then in using AI to protect or to help within our defense, we actually saw that AI threat hunting is actually something that most organizations are looking at, as well as vulnerability scanning and vulnerability assessment. So most organizations are using AI within these sectors, as well as identity and access management for within Africa. So our priority, most of the priority areas where agentic AI is currently being used within cybersecurity is cloud security, as earlier mentioned. Also for data protection. Most people are also using AI for cyber defense operations, where you have people using AI for threat hunting and also identity access management. We also saw that some are also using AI within the cyber governance space, where we have AI actually helping in doing some security audits and security assessments within that space, and also making sure that we are compliant. Definitely, with every new tool that comes, there's always a skill gap. We actually have to fill the skill gap. And most leaders, what most leaders were reporting were that there was actually a lack of relevant skills when it comes to AI within Africa. So we actually have, between Africa and the global readings, we have about 20 points difference within them, which is actually a huge gap when it comes to skills. And also within Africa also, there's the lack of knowledge in AI, as well as some unclear risk appetite when it comes to AI within the skills gap. So I am hoping very soon, hopefully next year, we'll close the lack of relevant skills gap by about 10 or 5%. So looking at quantum computing and whether we are ready for it is also one thing. Within Africa, we are still actually, from the survey, we are actually still within the exploring stage, whereas in globally, they are actually piloting. So it means that we are still one step behind globally. However, since we are exploring, it means that we actually would come up with, or we'll get to the piloting stage very soon. And it also means that we actually not even just sitting back and watching the world move forward as we are going. So within Africa, we actually within the exploring stage, which I said earlier, that it's a good start for us. So we saw about 47% people saying that they're actually exploring the use of AI in quantum computing, making sure that they are actually ready for quantum computing. So what are some of the top challenges that most leaders were faced with when it comes to post-quantum cryptography? So we saw that there was a huge technical gap. Also, the existing system integration is not there. Most of the applications or systems we are using are still, some of them are still legacy. That's for another debate, whether it's legacy or not. Also, there's a gap in quantum knowledge. So we just looked at that as well. And also the lack of visibility into even the crypto vulnerabilities that are currently emerging. So those are some of the top challenges or that actually exist currently within the most African organizations. We also saw that now most organizations are actually moving towards managed services. And this is actually because, again, earlier said, because of the skills gap. So they outsource these services to other firms. So some of the areas for the managed services that we saw were cloud security, AI, threat management, even data protection, network security are all being outsourced. So within that also, we also saw that most of them are, even though they are outsourced, they are also trying to do a build kind of thing, but they don't want to purchase the whole solution. So they either co-source, do a co-sourcing with whoever the vendor is in providing these services, cybersecurity services. We always say there's always a disjoint or disconnect when it comes to the technical and business leaders. But we've actually seen within the survey, what we saw was that within Africa, we've actually seen that most of the CISOs are actually actively talking with their CEOs, are actively talking with their boards, or actively talking with their CFOs. So it actually means that we actually have management buy-in when it comes to cybersecurity now within Africa. I also think that it's also because of the awareness that we currently are hammering on, letting management actually understand why the need for cybersecurity within our organization. And this is, we also did a metric where we asked them how often do they actually see their CISOs or their CEOs or their board. We had 40% globally saying that they meet their C-suites monthly, and 32% saying they meet within Africa, saying they meet their C-suites monthly to actually talk about strategy when it comes to cybersecurity. So this actually was a debate between the African team and then the global team, where they are saying that the cost for most people reported less breaches, or most African organizations reported less breaches, and also the cost for these breaches were also low. So they were saying that it's either genuinely we were resilient, or we actually have an immature threat detection capability. So one of the arguments that I was actually saying was, it's not because we have the immature threat detection, but hopefully it's also because that we actually don't share information. So we actually don't have access to this data. Desmond is looking at me in another so we actually saw that most of the breaches in Africa were less than 100,000 USD, and globally we saw that some 11% were actually breaches cost them over 10 million plus. So hopefully, as we have the CSA here, he might actually throw some more light into whether we are actually resilient, or we are immature when it comes to threat detection. So for our leaders, what do we do now? So as I said, this year's survey actually shows that we are actually forward-looking, and we are actually aligning cybersecurity with business strategies, and also being more proactive than reactive. And also, it also means that we are actually future ready, and we also not actually considering it cybersecurity as business as usual. So this means we are actually confronting every uncertainty, making a bold statement, and also having very informed decisions and building a very good strategy when it comes to cybersecurity. Thank you very much. If you have any questions.
Thank you so much, Clement, for a very insightful. Thank you so much. I think we had a delayed round of applause for Clement. So if we could kindly give him a round of applause for such an insightful presentation. I think the Africa take was very, very interesting, especially the part about if we're reporting or not reporting. So we will see how that goes. We do have the Acting Director General of the Ghana Cybersecurity Authority here, Mr. Divine Selassie Agbeti. I'd just like to invite him, if you can probably just give us a few comments, about 5 minutes, if you can share some remarks with us so that we can also take his views. Sir?
Thank you. I'll do 5 minutes plus 2. Is that okay? All right. Thank you. It's always a pleasure to come to PwC because one of my mentors is actually, in fact, he's currently the global CSO of PwC, Grant Cambridge. Yeah. So it's not surprising. Both Vish and Clement mentioned geopolitical risk because he never thinking about geopolitical risk. So when you are in a PwC security event, you always hear geopolitical risk, whether physical or cyber physical. Thank you. I think the presentation was so clear, and you mentioned AI. I think PwC can take some leadership, especially in assessing AI risk prior to adopting or developing an AI solution in an institution, and should be able to separate the risk assessment framework between generative AIs, predictive ones, and also what we now call the agentic. So there's an opportunity there for PwC to take leadership. As to whether we are cyber resilient in Africa, that question, I think the problem is a lot of institutions are not reporting incidents. And the second one also is that a lot of regulatory institutions are not enforcing because we feel the ecosystem is not ready for enforcement. We are now building. So we are supporting the ecosystem to build, and then we can enforce. So that is the answer to your question. Now I'll go straight onto my script. I'll be pretty fast. So, distinguished guests, it is a privilege to join you this morning for this important engagement. I would like to begin by expressing my sincere appreciation to PwC Ghana for organizing and hosting this engagement, and for bringing us together to reflect on one of the most pressing issues of our time, cybersecurity. PwC remains a valuable partner in Ghana's cybersecurity development journey, supporting both government and private sector to build institutional resilience. By the way, before I attend any event where I am invited, I check whether the institution inviting me are actually compliant to the CSA requirements. So I checked. In fact, when I got here, I asked Jake again, are you sure they are compliant? He said yes. Okay, so I do check. So thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, the theme, New World, New Rules, Cybersecurity in an Era of Uncertainty, could not be more timely and relevant. We are living in a period where digital transformation is accelerating faster than regulatory systems, faster than institutional controls, and indeed faster than our societies can fully adapt. Ghana stands today at a critical point in its digital evolution. We are witnessing unprecedented growth in digital finance, electronic payments, cloud migration, smart government services, e-commerce, and online citizen engagement. These developments are reshaping our economy and improving the way services are delivered. However, every advancement in technology also expands the attack surface for malicious actors. As we embrace innovation, we must ensure that security is not treated as an afterthought, but as a strategic pillar of corporate and national development. And that brings me back to CISOs and they being part of the C-suite. I think you should actually dig really deep into Ghana's one, because what I have discovered so far is that CISOs are just ceremonial CISOs. They don't go into management meetings. They come under CTOs. They come under chief risk officers. So they are never part of any decision making. And we want to change that. And I think a research from you to support the ecosystem will be a good one. Over the last decade, cyber threats have evolved from opportunistic email scams to highly coordinated criminal networks that exploit vulnerabilities across borders. The rise of artificial intelligence, as you mentioned, deepfakes, cryptocurrency-enabled laundering schemes, which you already mentioned, and the commercialization of hacking tools has lowered the barrier to entry for cyber criminals. Today, attackers no longer need technical expertise. They simply need access to the right tool on an online marketplace. This new threat landscape demands new thinking, new capabilities, and new forms of collaboration. For Ghana, the cybersecurity challenge is not abstract. It is real, measurable, and growing. Reports received by the Cybersecurity Authority from January to September 2025 through its incident reporting channels indicate online fraud is the most reported incident, followed by online blackmail, unauthorized access, information disclosure, and cyberbullying, respectively. Reported incidents within the same period resulted in losses of over 19 million Ghana cedis. That's from January to September. Social engineering continues to be the most used modus operandi of the threat actors. Critical infrastructure owners continue to experience attempts to disrupt services or access sensitive systems and data. These are not isolated incidents. They form a pattern which calls for coordinated strategic response. Ladies and gentlemen, the Cybersecurity Act 2020, which we are now reviewing, provides Ghana with a strong regulatory foundation. It establishes cybersecurity as a shared responsibility involving government, businesses, and citizens. Through regulatory interventions such as the issuance of the Baseline Directive for the protection of critical information infrastructure owners, accreditation and licensing of cybersecurity service providers, cybersecurity establishments, and cybersecurity professionals, and collaboration with public and private entities, including law enforcement agencies, Ghana has made significant progress in building a resilient national cybersecurity ecosystem. And thank you once again, PwC, for your compliance. Ladies and gentlemen, regulations alone is, however, not enough. The new rules, what we are looking at today, of cybersecurity require leadership commitment, security by design principles, threat intelligence sharing, and human-centered security culture, just to mention a few. And the rest were already mentioned during the presentation. The private sector must play an even greater leadership role. Private sector holds vast digital infrastructure, customer data, and platforms that the public depend on daily. A breach in any of these systems can cascade into national economic disruption. Therefore, your responsibility extends beyond corporate boundaries. It is part of the national security architecture. Please let us always remember that our role in the private sector is always part of the national security architecture. I would also like to emphasize that collaboration is no longer optional. Cybersecurity is not a competitive advantage to be hoarded. It is a collective resilience capability. When one institution strengthens its defenses, the entire ecosystem becomes stronger. When one institution is breached, the entire ecosystem becomes vulnerable. As we navigate this period of uncertainty, the National Security Authority, or the Cybersecurity Authority, remains committed to working with all stakeholders to strengthen Ghana's digital resilience through key initiatives, such as expanding threat intelligence sharing across sectors, enhancing national capabilities for detecting and responding to sophisticated attacks, deepening public awareness programs to empower citizens against online scams, and reviewing and updating regulatory frameworks to reflect emerging technologies such as AI, blockchain, IoT, and virtual asset ecosystems. To achieve these goals, we require your partnership, your leadership, and your commitment. This breakfast meeting is therefore not just a conversation. It is a call to action. Let us build operational relationships beyond workshops and conferences. Let us integrate cybersecurity into business strategy, procurement decisions, and executive KPIs. Let us invest in cybersecurity talent, as already mentioned during the presentation, tools, and resilience planning. Together, we must ensure that Ghana remains a secure environment for digital innovation, investment, public trust, and socioeconomic growth. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the future will not wait. The threats will not pause. The digital economy will not slow down. But with the right leadership, collaboration, and strategic investment, we can make Ghana not only digitally advanced, but digitally secure. I thank you all for your attention, your partnership, and your continued dedication to building a safer digital Ghana. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for such an insightful presentation. I'm sure we all have some key takeaways from that and things to be thinking about in terms of cybersecurity. We're going to go into our next segment, which is our panel discussion. For starters, I'd like to welcome our moderator for the panel. He said he preferred to just be called the PwC partner, so I'd like to invite Femi to join the panel. Femi, a round of applause for him, please. Femi, are we allowed to talk about the fact that you are the partner in charge of technology consulting now, covering West Market area? Good to go. All right, that's fine. Okay, thank you so much, Femi. Then next, I would like to invite Sylvia Sedo, the Chief Information Security Officer for UBA. As you welcome her onto the platform, please, you may join. Okay, I'll just read a little bit about Sylvia. She is, as I mentioned, she's an information security professional with experience in software development, trade facilitation, telecoms, and the banking sector. And she helps organizations to manage privacy, information, and technology risks through customized frameworks and risk management strategies so that they can focus more on innovative solutions and services. Another round of applause for Sylvia. Okay. Next, I would like to invite the founder and lead consultant at Information Security Architects Limited and a Rapid7 Gold partner, Desmond Israel. Okay, a round of applause for Desmond. He is a man who wears many hats. He's a law lecturer and head the Department for Public Law and Governance at GIMPA Law School. He's the partner in charge of cyber law and technology practice at Agnos Legal Company. He's a senior policy analyst with the Institute for Liberty and Innovation. He's a member of the EC Council of Beta Testing Committee and was a former research fellow at the Center of AI and Digital Policy in Washington, D.C. He's also a training consultant for the National Banking College on cybersecurity, AI, data, and data governance. So once more, a round of applause for our panel. We're really excited to have them here. So at this juncture, Femi, I think I'm going to hand over the conversation to you to drive that.
Thank you very much, and good morning, everybody. My panel members are very, very well experienced. I have a mix of both consulting and I have a mix of industry experience. So what I'll first say is, like in Ghana and like everywhere in the world, digital transformation is changing everything we do. You will notice that every single day there is a new technology that is coming on board. Right now, the major craze now is artificial intelligence. Yeah, but a few years ago, it used to be like blockchain, Internet of Things, and quantum computing. However, we need to understand that with the new introductions of technology and interconnectedness, there is a major risk that we all face, right? And the major risk is disruption. And it affects us a lot more now because of the interconnectedness. A few weeks ago, maybe like last week or 2 weeks ago, AWS was down. I don't know if you all heard, right? And if you know, half of the internet was down, right? So, this session is just coming in at the right time, whereby I would ask my esteemed panelists, right, a couple of questions around how resilience can be improved, right, in this new world. So my first question will go to Desmond. So I promised him already that every hard question I have is going to him. So please, it's fine. It's not like I'm favoring her. So every hard one we had agreed, right? Okay, so in this new rules of resilience, what do you believe is the biggest old rule of resilience that is dangerously obsolete now? And what is the new rule we should replace it with? Simple question.
Difficult questions. Yeah, okay. So I think what is most important is for us to remember that before the conversation of resilience, we were looking at preventive measures, detective measures, and then we went into recovery. So it was actually under recovery that the whole conversation around resilience started. So we are stuck in that old section where resilience is in the minds of either business owners or the drivers that by all means we need to bounce back. So that's the old state that we are in now, the idea of getting back. But I think the new thing now, especially in the age of AI, is how adaptive are you? So we need to change strategy from you buy the tools and the focus is redundancy and how we get the business back, to trying to look at things like resilience by design, for instance, on how we actually, through the business cycle, are able to identify the areas, the pinpoints where disruption can actually affect. So whilst you're thinking about the general model of we need to get back, so we are going to buy this tool and that tool, you're also thinking about the processes that are involved. For instance, like how quick it is for you to identify that there's been a breach, right? But once there's a breach, there's a number of things that happens with it. If there's a personal data involved, there's notification. Breach notification, which is compulsory, because that can actually escalate to either your customer trust or having issues with your regulator. And that is if we are in a regime where enforcement is top notch, you know. So that's like an example of why I think that the bouncing back is the old state, because we always want to wait. Okay, we have some backups there. So when there's a ransomware, we're just going to, you know, restore the files. But how about all the conversations that also surrounds how does the top management themselves understand ransomware as a subject, for instance? And how do you get them along? What are the things that would happen in the business value chain that would cause ransomware to disrupt you? That's the adaptive conversation I'm referencing to.
Okay. Thank you very much. So what I read right now is we need to be a lot more adaptive in terms of our thoughts around resilience. What about that thought? What about that discussion of having a DR site versus focusing on mean time to recovery when it comes to resilience? What are your thoughts around that, Desmond, again?
So mean time to recovery, it goes back to the old state conversation. I think the metrics that you want to look at, the KPIs you want to look at you know, the CISO, CIO, board level, is rather mean time to detect, mean time to contain, right? Because you're still having a recovery conversation. There's nothing wrong with it, but you're discussing new age cyber threats with me. Data poisoning in your AI system is not waiting for you to recover. It's actually at what point are you able to find out that the intelligence that is coming from your systems has been poisoned through an AI attack. That is a detection issue. The KPI there is mean time to detect and not mean time to recover. And when you detect it, how soon are you able to do the containment? Because that is where the problem starts. If your banking server is going to go down, if your hospital management system is going to go down, it has to do with how you are able to contain that threat. That is way before MTTR comes in, you know. So that's how I see it. Even if you put the metrics before me, I can tell you that this metric is late in the day. And whilst you're discussing the new direction, I think MTTR shouldn't be the first that we want to look at when we want to have a conversation about new age resilience. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. As a CISO, so I'm coming to you now. This one is an easy one, I hope. Okay, so as a CISO now, if you were to advise a CEO, right, what are the things you should focus on in the first 100 days, right, of coming on board in an organization when it relates to resilience? You can speak from your practical experience that you have. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that not so easy but easy question. Okay, so with regards to resilience, if you're a CEO and you're coming, first of all, as a new person in the environment, you need to know what it is you are coming to. What's the state of the technology? What are the processes? And what's the vision of you as well as the board? With the current state of your technological investments or even your processes, can it sustain that business, right? So, yes, I know he says resilience. At first, when we speak of resilience, we were all working in one single building and we have our server 2 floors down and we can work it. But I believe that COVID came to change the dynamics. The perimeter used to be in the building. Now your perimeter moved to people's homes, and it is sort of back in the building, but still in people's homes. And we had to digitalize a lot of processes. I hear you when you talk about digital transformation, but most of the times when I look at some organizations, it's more or less digitalization. We were writing it on paper, now we are putting it in computer. We are not really transforming our businesses in terms of the kind of data, the kind of optimization that can be implemented in terms of looking at what it is we have installed. Some people have data that they don't know that it's actually a gold mine. If you decide to even go in there and really look at the kind of services, you would realize that you'll be more innovative in terms of the products you are giving out and how you are attaching your customers at the various touch points. Yes.
Thank you very much. You mentioned something about perimeter, right? So I'm coming back to you again. the perimeter that we now have in our businesses is different. In the past, I used to just care about just my own organization. Right now, I have third-party providers. Right now, I have access into my environment, or that people I even rely on. Right. The question there is a twofold one. The one is, how do we balance speed, right, versus business objectives when it comes to compliance around resilience? That's one. Then number two is, how do we get assurance, right, on resilience about our third-party providers or third-party entities that we work with? Two questions. Simple again. I'm setting up. Don't worry.
So when it comes to third parties, whether we like it or not, we both depend on someone to give us a service. With Mr. Lead Consultant, I need him to come and look at my setup to see whether it's indeed what it is serving the purpose it is supposed to serve. Now, with third party, unfortunately, it's a necessary evil. And for us in the banking sector, we have a framework that we are to work with, which is the Cyber and Information Security Directive, which states certain items that we are supposed to do. We classify them based on the services, and based on that, we build what we call a guardrail based on our risk assessment on what the service means to us and how we can protect ourselves and, most importantly, the customers. So third-party risk management programs have indeed become very, very important, and we have to do it annually. Sometimes it becomes a hurdle. And yes, AI is there to help us speedily run through the documentation to see who is compliant, who is not compliant. By the end of the day, I quite believe that we still need to touch points with them to say that this is the service you are giving to us. This is how important it is. So how can we help you transform your business to meet our regulatory compliance? Because at the end of the day, we are in business because of our regulators and our laws we need to stick to, we need to apply. Yes, following the laws alone will not necessarily provide what we call good enough security, but then it needs to be complied with.
Okay, and I'll just ride on that, right? If I think about our own organization as consultants, right, in a lot of the contracts we sign with our clients, you would always say right to audit in there. Everybody puts in a right to audit, and that right to audit has never been triggered. Nobody ever uses it. So this question is for Desmond now, yeah. As a consultant, what would be your advice, right, to organizations on when a right to audit should be triggered? And is it enough? That is my question.
Okay, so to the extent that you put a right to audit into a contract, lawyer's mind speaking, most people would only trigger it because there's a problem. And that's actually the problem. The fact that you want to trigger it when there's a problem is the problem. Because let me take you back to CrowdStrike. CrowdStrike glitch. I don't know how many of you experienced it. I wrote a whole paper about it. This is Microsoft signing a contract, an international contract, because the EU required them, you need that history, the EU required them to do that for anti-competitive issues. So they signed a contract where what they call independent security vendors are allowed to directly deploy security plugins to the kernel. Just for the records, the kernel is the core of the operating system. One nice day, CrowdStrike, updating the platform, makes a mistake they are yet to admit to, deploys it, hits systems, goes into the core, and shuts down operating system at airports, hospitals across the world. There's actually 2 lawsuits now against CrowdStrike on that. CrowdStrike is a third-party vendor. I don't know if Microsoft at that point was going to exercise their right to audit. I think that right to audit should be flagged every time you know that there is a high risk on your processing. It comes from what your risk register is telling you, what your internal and external cyber intelligence is telling you. Because to the extent that that service provider forms part of that value chain, You want to be sure that your resilience starts from there all the way to your internal environment. So you have to exercise right to audit, maybe sparingly, but more decisively. So I'm not going to say, oh, let's do it like we do with the regulatory requirements to, for instance, pen test your softwares. That's like quarterly, right? Or maybe half the year. That might be calling for too much, because you might not even have the resources as the business to go audit that third party. They may be 3-4 times your size. You don't even have budget for your own security. You want to exercise the right to audit to another organization that is deploying tools to millions of people across the world. So you always have to look at your best case scenario. What is happening? Is this something we need to know? And again, right to audit also doesn't mean you move with the auditors and get in there. I've done this with a service provider in Ghana, where my cloud service provider would have to do the audit and send validated reports. And this was a Bank of Ghana requirement, actually, just for the records. And so that's how we did that right to audit. We had to get them to do their SOC 2 and do an attestation report from a third party, and then that third party had to deliver the report, which we had to submit in confidence to the Bank of Ghana, so the regulated entity is clear that the risk that they anticipate has been taken care of. So that's one strategy, practically, how you can deploy the right to audit. Yeah. So, but still don't wait for the problem before you go and audit.
Okay. Thank you very, very much. I think another thing, right, that organizations do to get a bit of comfort around what they call around resilience are tabletop exercises. However, we all know that a lot of those tabletop exercises are just check-box exercises. You really don't simulate, right, everything bad happening. That's one. Even in this simulation, because it's pre-warned, because everybody's informed, that human nature, right, of first stepping back and thinking or getting worried, right, never comes into play. So my question is, my question goes to you, Sylvia. Yeah, how is it? How can we make tabletop exercises more practicable, so that it really, really adds value to the organizations?
Okay, so the essence of a tabletop exercise is to ensure that should the day we have a crisis, it's not a chobe effort, as my former boss once put it, but then we are doing things organized and structured, or we even have a base to stand on in order to care of the situation. So with tabletop exercises, what I do is that if it is on a particular system or a process, I always engage the process owners to find out what are your processes, what are the risks you are facing, what are your challenges and pain points. And based on that, we will sit down and formulate the key issues they are facing, their key pain points, and based on that, we will create a scenario to match it and then have that exercise. I will agree, it's very difficult to get management, especially, or executive management and the board to sit down to have this exercise done. So one thing I always ensure is that it's embedded in their trainings, annual training, so that at least in a calendar year, we have our pain points documented, and a scenario is created to ensure that they are aware of the key issues, their roles that they are supposed to help us in addressing them, as well as the resources that we need. So usually after such a drill, it becomes a bloody massacre when we go for it's not a massacre, but a fact-finding mission where we go for board committee meetings where we are doing our quarterly reports, which I personally welcome, because it means I'll get my budget approved when I bring it. I'll get my budget approved when I bring it. But then it's always good to ensure that you're looking at your scenarios and then also look at industry, not necessarily within the industry you are working with, but in other industries, and formulate some of the key points in there to formulate the crisis. But if I come and give you a scenario which sounds fantastical, you even lose the interest of the room. And one thing I notice is that if you decide to, I do technical drills with the technical team, but then when it comes to the management, I look at it from the process, from a profit, from a mission-driven directive or a viewpoint in deciding those drills. Because the minute it becomes technical, I learned from my first engagement with the board, they lose interest.
They will lose interest in
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. What I would ask, right, is to Desmond. A number of times, right, the tabletop exercises are successful, right? However, when a real incident occurs, people are confused, right? They don't know what to do. So, from your experience, what is the best way to actually take all those tabletop exercises, the learnings, and build it into muscle memory, so that people know exactly if things go wrong? Immediately you've taken off your human nature out of it, then we can now follow and lay down plans. What is the best way to achieve that?
There is actually a deficiency in tabletop exercise, and it's not technical. Okay. Nobody adds the psychological part of tabletop exercise. Raise your hand if you do. I have questions for you. You do. Tell us what you involve.
Tell you what.
What's involved with your psychological process?
Well, I guess I can mention my previous organization. So, with Vodafone, we have a psychological profile we play.
That's the learning.
So, in any tabletop exercise, in any drills we do, we have all the angles covered, especially because Vodafone Group owns so many opcos around the world. So what you practice in Europe, some of them are not even applying in Malta or Greece, because Greece and Malta is like a whole different continent. Now, then you take the African context. What is practiced in Egypt might not be favorable in West Africa or might not be favorable in Southern Africa, where you have DRC, South Africa, Mozambique, Seychelles, all those countries. And then you go to the east where you have Kenya, Tanzania. All the cultural norms comes into place. So for every exercise, you had to go through that. It's unique. I don't think most companies do it. There are very few companies who do that.
As part of this detailed process is something called panic exercise. Nobody does panic exercise. CTO, CEO, CFO don't even know how to manage the panic, because you control the table exercise so much such that they find it very comfortable. Disaster is not comfortable. When it is triggered, everybody is going to run around. You forget that there's a communication metrics. You forget that you have to call your superior first. I have seen a ransomware attack where everybody was running around, including CISO, because this is confusion, absolute confusion. We've not seen these before. And we're talking days when ransomware has just slipped into the market, you know. Nobody has seen it, and we are service providers, so now we have to come and figure it out. But you don't even get the cooperation that you wanted, because the team themselves, they are in panic mode. But these are people who have regular tabletop exercises. So I think that if we are discussing resilience into the future, we should also be discussing how we deal with tabletop exercises. Whether you are having that conversation with your service provider, internal, you need a panic exercise. Red teaming has proven to be a very effective tool from a technical perspective, because you actually use real attackers, except they are your own employees, to trigger the attack. And the blue team is always on their toes, and you can feel the edginess and the confusion. Where are they now? Where is the attack? I can't see anything on my SIEM. We had a pen test engagement, and after we were done, we just got this feedback from the team. Oh, we saw you, we saw you, and we just didn't want to. Do you know you've been exploited? You saw it, but you were late. Because at the point you were seeing it, the exploit is already in the environment, and the reports could show. The reason why I brought it up is you get to experience what could actually happen in the disaster where this resilience has to be triggered. And it comes in all manner of levels. So if we don't add that panic exercise to these old tabletop or the panic component, which comes from the psychological process, if we don't add it to the process, then we are going to miss the point. Because when disaster happens, we go back to the scenario that you gave us. Because there's no other better way to simulate these things than to create that tabletop exercise in addition to what the potential panic is. So you can use panic triggers all over. It could be a simulated attack. You know, we are running phishing simulations every day, and most of the times we are even running them as though it's just a compliance checkbox. But you've invested in these things. You could use them in your tabletop exercise. CEO should actually receive a mail, click it, and realize that an attack is coming. You know, before you go to triggering the communication metrics and who does what and who escalates and where do we end and how do we amass the evidence and push it forward, you need to add some reality to it. There's always a level at which they'll come in. I agree with Sylvia. At a point, if you do too much technical stuff with top level, you lose them. But the whole storyline must be planned such that they feel that at the point that you're going to put your pen, at the point that you're going to take your phone and make a call, there is a real panic. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. So I can just give a bit of experience here too, right? So I've had a client that said, I want to do a tabletop exercise. What I'm going to do is give you a window. So in the next 9, I'll sign a contract now, right? However, the scenarios you are going to trigger, right, we will agree on them, right? You will have a 90-day window to come and trigger them, right? And the guys that are going to respond will not know when. So what they were trying to do was also to bring in that panic. The panic, because really, when you do a tabletop exercise, you can bring in the culture, as my colleague, as my friend from Vodacom said, right? However, as long as I know it is an exercise, it's a test, that emotional, that panic bit of it will not be there. So if you come in and say within a window, 90 days, anytime you want, come and trigger it. In that way, a lot of people are not ready for it. Are not ready for it. And that way it worked. And guys messed up. It was a bank. And you could see guys just running up and down, all laughing at guys. Look at these guys. And they have and they do tabletop exercises regularly. And they have their plans that have been fine. Okay, so Desmond, let me go. Okay, yes, please. Yeah.
One thing I also realize is that usually with the plans, we keep them under our in your drawers, or it's in some old folder that you created last year. It's a plan. One thing I realize is that sometimes when it's also in your face, you see it, you internalize it, and it gives you a little bit of psychological comfort. So I had a chance to mitigate a ransomware attack. And one thing I also realized is that leadership communication. If the person leading you is calm, if the person leading you has confidence in the plan because it has been tested, it all goes smoothly. Because I quite remember we had a ransomware issue, and because we had the plans pasted on our decks in front of us, it was okay. If it's this, do that. There was a flow. And also, as he said, the psychological part is really, really, important. So if you have a plan, it should always be in your face. You should always see it so as to provide you a level of comfort. Because if you're seeing it, you'll be thinking of scenarios. We don't have this process anymore, or the department that does this is no longer doing this, it has been moved here. So it is constantly being updated and made relevant to your situation. As you said, adaptability. So one thing is that when you make plans, don't hide them. Don't hide them. It should be in your face, so as it's always being refreshed. There's always being checked to see if it's adaptable to our or relevant to our situation as it is now.
Thank you very much. We cannot speak of resilience, or we cannot speak of disruptions, right, without getting into artificial intelligence. Yeah. However, anywhere you go, everybody says I want artificial intelligence, but everybody's afraid. I don't know what they're afraid of. I don't know why they're afraid, right? as a technology person speaking now. So my question will be to Desmond there. At the C-suite level, what are the major artificial intelligence risks, right? Real ones. I'm putting real in front, right? That C-suite should be worried about. And basically, are they focused on the wrong things? May I agree with that one?
Okay. So I see two things. First of all, the explainability is a big concern. And then the idea of transparency, I would connect that with data quality. But what do we usually see with AI governance? We treat it like other technology conversations. We see the tech aspect. I think AI risk is a governance issue and not a code issue. And I had the same conversation with somebody who designed something he called policy by code or policy through code, some concept like that, where AI system is designed from day one to involve the policy. So from the development stage, how the data comes in and all that, all the way to the final product, and then it goes out. He presented at ISACA, if I'm not mistaken, and I had a conversation with him on the side, and I said, I think it's the same answer we want to give here. Before you can achieve that, there has to be an agreement at the top. What the real risk is, that is what goes into the policy, which is now coded in there. So it takes us back whether or not the AI risk conversations we are having is a tech issue, is a code issue, or is a governance issue. Now, when you treat it as a governance issue, you are faced with two things. There is AI ethics today, literally non-binding, more voluntary, if you like, guidelines or documents. Let's take EU, Brazil, and a few of them out who are passing AI laws that has some of these encoded in there. But on our side of the world, we'll still do it with AI ethics. The intention is, well, as much as I could put in. But I had a training with some board. In fact, I've done 14 trainings for boards in Ghana on AI governance. And I've asked almost everyone the same question. What happens when your AI discriminates against a certain set of your customers for maybe loan approvals? And I used my ethnicity as example. They always laugh. What if you discriminate against Ghana people taking loans in your bank because there is an historical context that if Ghanaians take the loan, they are not going to pay and they will get aggressive? But do you know that that bias can be coded into AI? And it's very simple. It has to do with the historical data. You don't even need to say it. The data that the bank has collected over time has the historical trend in there. That's bias by design. Because it's going to judge every single person who is coming to the bank who fits that criteria by that criteria. But your problem is the 1% who have everything checked out and will repay the loan on time, but your system discriminates against them. So at that point, are we looking at a code issue? Who decided that the historical data is good enough? It has enough data quality to go in there. Who decides how we are going to explain how AI came by these decisions? Explainability. And how transparent was the process to the people taking the loan? Even as a lawyer, I can tell you, currently under the Data Protection Act, your customers, they have the right against automated decision making. And AI is not part of it. AI is not part of it. AI is part of it. Automated decision making. Under the Electronic Transactions Act, we have defined what we call electronic agents. Electronic agents, they create a moral agency for you. A scenario happened in Canada. A gentleman called Moffat used Air Canada's AI bot. And then he was purchasing a ticket. He asked them if he could get what we call a bereavement refund. He asked the chatbot. Chatbot says yes. And chatbot gives some, fancy timelines for that. Moffat buys the tickets, and then the bereavement period was due. So he filed for the refund. Air Canada now tells Moffat, no. You should have gone to this section of the website. There's a full policy on these refunds. The content in there is what applies and not what the chatbot said. You know what the courts in Canada did? And I love that decision. It said that the AI chatbot was a representative, an electronic agent, which we have even defined in our laws already as far back as 2008. Air Canada was told by the courts that the chatbot is a representative of AI Canada, and all its misrepresentations you are liable for. So that was a chatbot hallucinating. But the last time I checked, when we say hallucination, you only think of ChatGPT. But half the banks, and like I said, I've trained 14 bots, half the banks are deploying WhatsApp bots, which are doing customer service, even telling people what sort of process they should go to acquire loans. Nobody is paying attention to the risk because you assume the AI developer is the kingpin. The decision is actually yours. It's a governance one. And just for the records, your regulator will come very heavy on you. It might not even be your customer taking you to the courts. Your regulator is going to come on you very heavy. So it's a governance. I mean, all the examples I gave you was just to make my point that it's a governance issue. It has to be part of the governance conversation. What sort of AIs do we want? What sort of module do we want? Where do we want to deploy them? What sort of risk comes with these deployments and all that? And sometimes even the mitigation that comes with it.
Okay. Thank you very much. And from a practical point of view, right, as a CISO, what are you doing around AI governance? AI governance around the risks. What are you doing around that from a practical standpoint, if you started?
Okay, so from an information security perspective, when it comes to AI governance, as you rightly said, data quality, how to protect the data against data poisoning, who has access to what. And with the AI conversation, I believe this is a multi-stakeholder thing. It's not only, okay, IT, we want AI, so here's AI. As we said, we can give you the system, the compute, the access rights, etc. But the compliance bit of it, the ethics bit of it, and then what we need to achieve, what we want to achieve as a business as well. So obviously, there should be some oversight and exception given. Then again, we enter into the area of explainability as he has stated it. So with the AI conversation, I believe it should not be treated as a solely IT thing, but it requires all stakeholders across board, from operations, from risk management, or governance, the lawyers, company secretariats, as well as end users, because you have to test it, and the issue of bias is real. Even I have my own biases. So definitely, if I am working on something, I would input it there. So the issue of testing also comes into play. And one thing I like about organizations is that usually especially when you are may I say, is multinational institutions, that when you're testing, you have the opportunity to test internally to ensure that the output you are getting is what you want. You can explain it to the regulator as it is, because most often when you say, oh, and the system does it, and then they're like, okay, what are the matrices? Then everyone is quiet. It becomes an issue. It becomes an issue that people are winning law cases against, and as an organization, we are here for the profit, not to share it. So these are things that we need to look. And then most often too, when I realize I see a chief AI officer, most often they are sitting in the IT department. Yep. I'll just look at the system if it were me, because I'll look at, oh, I need more compute, etc. But then the processes around it, etc. So it's an issue, and then it all starts from your data management, ensuring you are putting in the right kind of data to achieve the right kind of results that you can defend.
Okay, thank you very much. I think a last question for both of you. What is the final takeaway, right, to our guests on resilience? Just one line, one line each.
The future of resilience for me is what you can consider to be converging resilience. You have to deal with cyber, AI, data at the same time. There could be breaches on all fronts at the same time. Yeah.
Doomsday, yeah?
Doomsday.
Wow.
Not really doomsday.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, for me, it's about getting your fundamentals right. In as much as we build complexities, it's still the foundations that hold it. Our data, the governance around it, the kind of stakeholders, and ensuring that it's not only an obscured, only one department, but all sections of the organization to get involved to ensure that it's being done right to ensure we achieve the mission of the organization.
Thank you very much. At this point, I will just I will pass it on to our guest. Does anybody have a question for our panelists? Any questions, please? Okay. Questions? Okay, I've seen somebody's hand is up.
Good morning. I want to ask, one of you talked about the ecosystem not matured for regulations on some things, right? And I think the CSA also highlighted that. I want to ask a question on the third-party risks and supply chain risks. My question is, what's your take? Is it good to do incremental regulations as the ecosystem matures, or you go big bang, do the regulation and allow the give time for the players in the industry to catch up? So you do the regulation and give a number of years instead of doing incremental regulations as the ecosystem matures. Thank you.
I like that. She actually said it's yours. They've ganged up. Okay, so this is a personal opinion, okay? I don't know if that would be best practice for you. But you don't regulate technology. You regulate the behavior and the outcomes. If you attempt to regulate technology, then you're going to play a catch-up. You literally will pass a law every single day. I agree with adaptive regulation, but only to the extent that you have to allow the regulator to make a determination what sort of adaptations to do, of course, based on stakeholder engagements. The US never had provisions for supply chain attacks. They never did. Until we had one supply chain attack. Which one happened before MOVEit? There was, sorry, I've forgotten the, SolarWinds. SolarWinds. The SolarWinds attack was a supply chain attack. Right after SolarWinds, SEC has new regulations, FTC has new regulations, FCC has new regulations. All of them for supply chain attack, which was because out of that supply chain attack, they identified a national security concern. You know, the attackers were, attribution shows that the attackers were either Russians or Chinese or a combination of both. And that's when supply chain regulations came into the space. So to the extent that you are regulating the behavior that comes out of these technologies, first of all, you want to set out baselines. Once you have the baselines, you want to do incremental regulations. But what would I support more when it comes to incremental regulations? I think we should use the power of administrative guidelines and then legislative, as in LIs, to actually improve the laws. I'm vehemently, sorry, I'm using my lawyer term, but I'm vehemently opposed to remodeling laws all over again under the terminology of an amendment. Because existing laws are such that it gives a lot of regulatory powers to the regulator and the authority to give us guidelines, give us LIs, you know, on what we are supposed to do. So you find that AI is the new big thing now. Let's have an LI on AI, and next to whichever original law that exists. And let's move on from there. Let's go back to major amendments. That's when you want to touch the entire law itself, maybe collapse it and bring some new things in there. So adaptive regulation, I totally agree with you. We are just not aligned on the process. I don't think that there should be like a cap on the amount of time that industry should experience that law before we come up with another law. Adaptive regulation means that you leave the regulator to look out seriously for the concerns, and when they come up, they quickly churn out various guidelines, regulations, LIs, like I said, to be able to regulate the space. And like I said, that's a very personal opinion. Yes. And it's consistent to everything I've said about regulations. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, thank you. So my question has to be, how far can we take resilience? Because as you have resilience in trying to close the gap when it comes to security, there's also resilience attack. There are attacks that are very resilient that until they get what they are looking for, it's not done. One example is what just happened with EY, where 4 terabytes of their data was taken. And this attack came through Microsoft Azure. So in that part where you have a third party, where you think it is safer because it's being handled by Microsoft Azure. However, this attack happens because of its resilience. What do you do? And in the space where you have attacks or you have a tabletop that is using certain flows like a SOA, you have the automation done. However, these are things that are bypassed. What do you do apart from the necessary resilience you put together? Thank you.
It's your question.
Okay, so the thing about getting a third party is that, yes, the third party is there to help you achieve your goal, but at the end of the day, you're ultimately responsible. So how frequently did you check to see that your guardrails are indeed those guardrails? And one thing I realize is that, yes, we all preach segregation of duties, but sometimes at a point in time, there is no segregation anywhere. Right? Who is checking the other? Am I supposed to implement and check myself? And the person who is doing the checking, does the person have the requisite skill gap or skills to ensure that they are able to identify my blind spots as well as, because I can think a control is effective, but then if I get an external person to come and recheck what I'm doing, I would realize that there are certain areas that need to be addressed or are not adequately covered by what I'm implementing. And with third parties as well, now the mantra is that it's not if you get attacked, it's when. So how are we protecting our data to ensure that legally we are compliant? I quite remember I had a third party I was interviewing, and I was like, but the country where your server, you don't have data adequacy. And he asked me, does Ghana have data adequacy what's it called? Requirements? And I'm putting it, I'm making it a requirement for them. The answer was no. So the issue of data sovereignty comes up here. Initially, we used to have the regulator against the idea of keeping certain data or sensitive data that's classified as sensitive in other countries. But as we go on, and then we have software as a services where we sometimes have no idea where the data is sitting at, we increasingly have to fall back to look at the contracting languages, whereby I would, when it comes to that time, Desmond and his colleagues become my best friends, because at the end of the day, they know the language to ensure that at least certain items are made mandatory, and then we can take you to court or take you to tax if there are certain failings. And then we also have to ensure that whatever it's a shared responsibility model. So we have to play our part so that's to ensure that should anything, the ball drops at any point in time, we can defend ourselves and ensure that we defend our business and the customers as well.
Let me just add a line to that. So I also think that don't look at resilience so much from just that recovery from an attack. What happened with the undersea cables? Who had control? See, it's a country level thing. You have your Pete at Cote d'Ivoire engaged by a natural disaster, and then the whole country is off, right? In a good resilience conversation, there has to be tiers to the resilience. Which ones are directly within your control? Which ones are in the third party's control? Which one is provided by government or international bodies? And how you react to all of them. So the reaction would vary. How you come back would vary. How you adapt will vary. Sometimes the only answer in the situation is cyber insurance. I mean, if you're hit by a 0 day, for instance, it means your vendor did not even know. They didn't see it coming. But resilience is still yours to answer. So when that happened, what was your fallback plan? You know, what allowed you to still adapt and still move on with business? So I just thought I should add that.
Thank you. Just wanted to comment on the gentleman's issue on Microsoft Azure. And what you realize is sometimes when companies are breached in the cloud, whenever they go into contract with cloud service providers, companies don't normally do their side of the bid. So there is this thing called a responsibility matrix. And normally the cloud service provider will do their bid, do all the configurations that are required within that responsibility matrix. But we who are going, or the companies that are going for the service, might not look at the responsibility matrix to do our side of it. So when there is a breach, you always see that the company did not put their controls in place. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just starting based on the action on the third parties, how do you scope it and to what extent, especially in our environment here? So I have suppliers maybe supplying with footwear, safety wear, some supplying IT devices, fixing the ACs. And how do you scope them? Because we've seen attacks where an AC contractor got compromised and brought it in here. But in our context, at times when you want to drive some of these things home, but PPE has cleared me and all of those things, how do we manage that? Especially, and secondly, with this resilience, how do staff comes to play in all of this? What's their role? Because you put all those infrastructure, spend the money, all of those policies there, just like, okay, let's click somewhere. And now everybody's running health-scared. And the one who clicked will be the first person to point fingers. So how do you scope all of these things? Thank you.
Best practice is always based on the risk. That's the best practice. But I'm assuming you want to see where to put them, actually. Because you use a footwear, you use an AC, and you use IT. I get where you are going with this. But the question you have to ask yourself is still based on risk. Does the AC person have access to the entire environment such that even server room they have access to? Do they have access to the CEO's office? And when I say the AC guy, I'm talking about the company and his agents, everybody, because that's how you evaluate them. If they do, who are they related to? So I went through a drill in the US. And that's because my company's name apparently has a similar name with a company in Russia. Yes, true story. And then they placed us on what they call foreign assets freeze. So we're not able to access money until they cleared us off, that we have nothing to do with that company. That was actually an assessment on the vendor. So you can see how far they went, because they didn't want to fall foul of US laws where money has to move between companies in Russia and the US. But I'm talking still on the cybersecurity service. So that is one way to look at it. Where are the risks? What are you actually supposed to address? The risk. If the AC guy has access, or he or she or the organization have proximity to the risk, is a point of interest. You need to address that, and that has to come with the way you even do your vendor assessments. There are vendor assessors that questionnaire is enough. Once they take, you know, okay, this one I can handle them. Where they fall on the risk metrics is not really a big deal. And then there are those that, as soon as they are done with the risk metrics, the first example I gave with the Bank of Ghana clearance thing, that's exactly what happened to us. As soon as the third party was done with the risk assessment, they said, no, you trigger right to audit before you even begin to deploy. And then we have to request. Now, bank do not have the kind of money that would do the audit because it was not even part of the project plan. So partner now assumes responsibility that, okay, I will do the audit and pass you the reports. So you don't need, I would use a third party to do that. So you see, a practical assessment of a vendor, just giving you two scenarios. One purely has to do just with the name, it flags. And then another has to do with, after completing the questionnaire, there are concerns as to, do we lose something when you plug into these environments? Okay, let's have confidence that we don't lose anything, and then that comes in. So scope on the risk, but those of you who like the technical conversation, you can also look at the layered security aspect of your environment, physical risk, you know, so physical security, the perimeter, then you come into your internal network, your systems, your applications, your data, your users. And then you can go out and look at the cloud, you know. So if you do it that way and you realize where all the vendors are on that particular metrics, you can be comfortable enough to say that at the perimeter level, this vendor is a risk I don't want. And then you take mitigating steps.
Sorry, just to add, right? Another thing we've seen is that when a third-party risk assessment is done, it's typically done when the vendor is coming in. However, when things change, you must also do it. So, e.g., if I use this example of AC, right? So we bring in an AC company, and all they are doing is fixing AC in our offices. You may say the risk is low at that point in time. However, once that AC moves into your data center where cooling is key, that guy's risk is automatically heightened. Because why? If something is put into that AC and it goes off and all your servers burn or overheat, then you guys are screwed. So basically, every single time there's a new interaction with your third-party entity, you must do an assessment. Initially, we used to supply AC to our offices. Right now, it's supplying AC to our data center. Criticality is different. Risk is different. How you treat is different. Right? So I think that's something you must take note of also. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So for me, we've heard a lot. For those of us that the ship has sailed on building the fundamentals, where do we start from with our resilience? How do we, if I should say, just catch up from somewhere? Where do we start from? Where do we, put in the controls to make sure that we are on course? Because this is what I think the hackers are always a step ahead of us. No matter what you do, you're always trying to find loopholes and all that. What do we do now? What is our saving grace now? Because the fundamentals are already weak, so yeah.
I would say start from where you are now. Where you are now, what is most critical to your business? What processes are non-negotiable? And then from there, engage the stakeholders and ensure that whatever guardrails or safeguards you're bringing in there have the buy-in. Most often you'll say, oh, this is that, okay, put 2FA on it. But the process owners do not want 2FA on it. They will find a way to bypass. That's the beauty about the human spirit. No matter what, we'll find a way around it. How are we going to be detecting that? So it's a conversation you need to have with your process owners. And with cybersecurity, it's not everything that requires getting a tool involved. Sometimes it's just putting a check stop before you proceed. And more than often, a typical example is the third-party due diligence. IT will bring in a vendor, and you do not engage other stakeholders. Compliance comes in. They have to check whether the board of directors, the company registration, they are accurate. Do they have any negative reports on them, etc.? So it's not a silo thing that sits in one department. You have to bring all departments involved, because I am a cybersecurity person. I am not so knowledgeable in law. Yes, I can give my 2 cents on some items, but I need the expert in the room to understand it from the source, so as to ensure that whatever we are implementing has the stakeholder buy-in and they can sustain and implement it. Not that it's other times, so we just produce the documents and run away. It has to be inbuilt so as to make it seamless and natural to the overall process.
Thank you. I think we will take our last question from the room now. Are there any questions online? No questions online. So we'll take our last question from the room. Anybody doing us the honors? Aha, thank you.
Okay, good morning. In the issue of panic and desktop, who do you inform when you have to do some of these simulations, and should the executive be told, for example?
Okay, so a typical example, there was a fire drill, and because the executive members were told, they decided to sit down. And as we all know human psychology, we always look at what the leader is doing. So when they realized the leaders weren't coming out, they were like, oh, this is a drill. So instead of hurriedly moving, now people actually sat down and packed their bags, etc. Before they started moving down slowly, there was no sense of urgency. So I agree with Desmond that I have a 30-day window and any day can be it. So that is it. Maybe inform the owner of that risk, but to inform everyone, you'd realize that the response is not it. So, and even when it comes to the human vulnerability assessment, especially, we always utilize social engineering. It gets to a point, someone was saying, oh, Sylvia, I can see you started your thing again.
Any last? Okay. Sorry, there's more down there.
So, with regards to you deciding not to inform the executives so as not to create that psychological, nothing serious is happening. What if it disrupts a very important meeting?
I mean, your attack, your real attack is actually going to disrupt an important meeting. And that's an answer enough. That's a position that you need to let governance of any institution appreciate. The bottom line which they are trying to protect is now endangered by technology risk. What I think would also be best practice is, like she said, there's a plan. You know that in the plan there's a 30-day window every year for a drill. So nobody's going to assume that you just got up from your department and decided to disrupt everything. You're following a plan which they have approved, but you decided to use the days appropriately so you can get the right reaction. If they are in a meeting, that meeting has to stop, because it is the same scenario they are going to experience. In fact, an embarrassing one when the attack is real. So I mean, I'm very, very particular about some of these things, so forgive me if I came across as being passionate.
Okay, so thank you for
interactive.
Yeah, thank you for all the stuff that you've shared so far. But talking about resilience, you mentioned some interesting things, and I want to talk about having local hubs, because you brought about the undersea. Yes, many of the things that are local are still routed out before they come in. So what if we had a local presence, so that, for example, I'm booking Uber or Bolt, And just because undersea is cut, I can no longer. Whereas we could have had a cached server here as part of building the resilience matrix that we are all talking about, so that it's not just a term and it's totally disassociated when we come to practical terms. Then you talked about the gap between when AI is actually giving a service and what is reality. Is there not a gap between frequent updates of what organizations are doing by the day and what, as in, when was the last update done at the front end to make sure that what Mr. Chatbox is saying is accurate? So those were the things that came to mind. But more seriously, I am for data governance because, like you mentioned, today, Russia has no favorites. Everybody is against them, and so we realized that everything about them was taken away from them. So we certainly need to know where our data is, even if we say cloud. Where is it? Should we now begin to advocate for having local cloud service so that, yes, the service provider is in the US, but they definitely have a local presence here so that at least if there is a cut, either by fiber or by war or by some geopolitical instances, we can still take hold of what is ours. I think that is, and for the likes of PwC, this is something that you, together with other strong players, should be advocating for.
Yeah, I totally agree with the local cloud. But my proposal has been that we can look at like a sovereign cloud. Because really, local cloud, I'm not too sure if we have the muscle to do a local cloud. But Germany has done this with Microsoft. I think France is on that path as well, and is working fine. What the sovereign cloud only does is you leverage on these infrastructures, but all the laws that governs it is your local laws. So it's technically saying, this is your building, but you lease it to me, you stay off, until my lease is over, something like that. Because yeah, the wherewithal to actually get what we would call the local cloud would really be a challenge. Probably some 2 decades. Yeah, I'm being honest with you, because when once they mention your GDP to you and mention that of Microsoft's revenue coming in, you know that you are not speaking the same language. Exactly. So we might want to look at some of these things and be more realistic towards our approach to it. So yeah, I totally agree with you. As for the local caching, when I had the interview with Joy FM on the undersea cable, I mentioned the local caching, that almost every essential service must have a local cache, so that when we have these lines terminated for one reason or the other, local services will work. I mean, I remember a scenario where one corporate environment couldn't use their IP phones. I was like, God, can you believe this? IP phones are not working? Like, how did you even configure some of these things? I thought they have fallback to local networks and all that. So, and again, this is where I speak for the regulator. Once they set some of these baselines, we have to comply. Baselines that creates the resilience, we have to comply, because sometimes the dependency and the fact that one person is not doing what they have to do, and that creates problem for all of us in the value chain, is something that should concern us. Yeah.
My comment has to do with the gentleman's point he raised. The ACs and all that, and I agree with my brother Desmond here on his responses. But I think one fundamental thing which I haven't heard throughout all these discussions is awareness. That dude who pushed the button, you can put all the checks and balances in place and he'll do it tomorrow. So I would advise that we take our awareness serious, because we're humans. We get into a route, we forget what to do, we are coasting, we're on remote control. So I think we need to do more awareness. So in an environment like that, you need to drum the awareness in repeatedly, to the point where if they get up and they're even going to the bathroom or to somebody's desk, they come back and they close their laptop. It becomes so natural. Because we can have all the checks and balances, we can have all the solutions, and one idiot is just going to do the wrong thing. Just one. Just one. Yes, yes. So I think we need to take the awareness very serious, all of us. Carrying it over, AI has arrived. Everybody's playing with it. I would advise people not to do AI searches using your company data. Don't go into ChatGPT, DeepSeek, JakeSeek, whoever it is, using your company data to do a research. The moment you put it in, I'm sorry, AI is taking it. AI starts searching in, we're doing all the permutations. Within a few minutes, AI can tell you everything about your organization based on that query you just asked for.
And there's no reverse?
No, there isn't.
There's no right to deletion?
No, you can't.
And no right to audit?
No right to audit. By the way, I love the right to audit because I use it a lot.
Oh, you?
I used it a lot, so I love it. But please employ your resources not to use any company data to do research on any of these chat AI solutions, because your data is going away free. You've got to be smart about it. Whatever you need to do concerning your company, you've got to be very smart about it. If you have ways and means to check when they go on to these AI solutions, if they type anything, you can flag it before they push send. There are solutions out there that can block them. Yeah. Because a lot of companies are losing data and they're wondering, how did this get out there? Well, because my boss asked me to do some research, so I plugged in a couple of things. I even added some numbers from last year's. Yes.
Like a Google Drive.
Exactly. So you add a couple of keywords, some numbers, and your whole balance sheet is out there. And the AIs are very smart to put 2 and 2 together to get 5, not 4. So please employ your guys to be careful what they put out there. We're not saying they shouldn't do the research, but you got to be mindful. Don't add any company data. And if you do any research on yourself or your family, please leave your personal business out of that too.
Okay, thank you very much. At this point, I would like to say thank you to my panelists, the guests. Unfortunately, time is up. I'm truly sorry. Yeah, I'm truly sorry. Thanks to my Vish. You want to close? Okay, so my panelists, thanks a lot. The guests, thanks for an interactive session. I think a key takeaway is the time to date section is extremely important in conversation around resilience. We should not just focus on recovery, right? And a last point is resilience is a conversation for everybody in an organization. Thank you very much.
Thank you to our panelists. You may have a seat. Thank you so much. All right, so time is fast spent, and we are pretty much at the end of the program. To wrap things up, I would like to invite our partner for deals, Augustina Ekwa Mills, to give us some feedback and also some closing remarks.
Thank you very much, Aku. As we wrap up this insightful cybersecurity forum, I would like to sincerely thank the Acting Director General of the Cybersecurity Authority and his team, our distinguished panelists, our speaker, and every participant here, whether online or in person. We appreciate sharing your time, your expertise, and your thoughts with us. Today's conversation has actually reminded us of an important reality. Cybersecurity is no longer just a technical issue, but a strategic priority. From emerging threats and regulatory changes to the impact of AI and data governance, we've actually explored how the fast-changing landscape is impacting our businesses, and this actually calls for more vigilance, collaboration, and innovation. You would agree with me that we are all living here more informed than we came this morning. We are more motivated, and I believe it's a call for us to strengthen our defenses in our organizations, build resilient systems, we've heard resilience over and over, and to champion a culture within our organizations and in our communities at large. This dialogue doesn't end here. I encourage you all to continue this conversation as you network with each other, as you go back to your various organizations and even to your homes. Continue connecting, exchanging ideas, and forming partnerships that actually drive meaningful change. Thank you once again for being part of our journey. I would encourage you all to scan our QR code and give us some valuable feedback to be able to serve you better in future. Enjoy the rest of your day, and please do stay secure. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ikwa. And yes, please, we'd just like everyone to take maybe just a quick minute or so. We want the feedback nice and fresh and hot if you want it that way. So if you just take a moment to do that for us. And then afterwards, we would do a quick photography session, starting off with the panel. Right, so we'll just use 1 minute to do this. Thank you for your patience. So we also have some people online. We'll encourage you to as well complete the feedback if you're online. If you have questions that you are thinking of later as we've wrapped up the session, no problem. Please go ahead and then share them there as well. All right, then. Thank you all so much, and we wish you the best for the day. All right. Thank you. Okay. Yes. Now, can we have? I think it's too big to do. Hello. So we're quite a large group. So we'll just take maybe those from this side of the room together with the panelists and our PwC partner. So could we please move towards the side? We know you want to network and engage, but we just want to do this quickly so we can let you go. Ikwa, you can stand there.
You can just move upstairs.
Yes. Please note the pictures are not compulsory. If you don't want to be in them, that's okay. I think she can.
Move the chairs. I mean, now we can remove the chairs.
If you carry it, no problem. About
the picture.
It's not compulsory if you don't want to take it, yes. You left?